On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I am Kate Madgziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallblast. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Give the show a follow on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us those 5-star reviews. It helps so much more than you can ever imagine. But don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. We have a new Locked On Dynasty YouTube channel where we will catalog all of these episodes for you. Get a little crazy with us. Hit that subscribe button on there. Give us those thumbs up. Help us help you win your fantasy leagues. Marcus, we had some Thursday night football last night, and D'Ernest Johnson blew the pants off of everybody in the house.
D'Ernest Johnson, RB1. No,
RB1.
I mean, he is RB1 for this week. I mean, just a great performance by him. So I have to ask, did you start him in any leagues last night?
I didn't have him in a single league. I didn't have him in a single league, and I'm pretty bummed about that. But I will say, I'm looking forward to the time that Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb get back into it, and then the hype on D'Ernest Johnson cools down, because I do think this guy, he looked very special on the ground last night. I don't think he's. I'm not calling a system. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski is always going to be a favorable rushing system, but I mean the way he moved, he looked so nimble. Is the word that pops into my head for some reason. He moved very smoothly and just showed a lot of patience, intelligence while he was running. Just a lot of really good decision making. So I know the moment that we see Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb make a return, I'm going to be making some offers there for D'Ernest Johnson. Did you get the pleasure to start him?
I did, and I actually had a league a dynasty league where I picked him up after his big performance against the Cowboys last year, and I just held on to him. This is a good little strategy tip to new dynasty players. But if there's a certain offense that just produces a lot of fantasy points at a certain position, like obviously Cleveland's running back, sometimes it's better to grab the third guy on that team than the second guy on somebody else's team, right? Like, for example, last night, Melvin Gordon was the starting running back for Denver, 8 for 18, Javonte Williams, 4 for 20. And those guys are certainly more talented, I think, than D'Ernest Johnson, but the situation's just not as good, right? It doesn't matter how many touches those guys get. They're just never going to be as efficient as D'Ernest Johnson. So it's just I'm not saying to go trade D'Ernest Johnson for Javonte Williams, but it's just a good lesson in know the spots on each team that produce fantasy points. We know this, like for the Cowboys, the receivers are going to produce points. We know this for Tampa Bay, the receivers are going to produce points. Grab some of the depth pieces there, build the back end of your roster. Okay, I want to talk to you about some other stuff in this game. I don't want to harp too much on Odell because he's pretty clearly hurt, and he probably shouldn't have played.
Yeah.
I'm okay excusing that one. The Jarvis Landry piece is interesting, though. Like, it's pretty clear that the offense just functions better with Jarvis in there, right? Like, it's the guy that both Case Keenum and Baker rely on big third downs. What's the fantasy value and the outlook for Jarvis Landry going forward for the rest of the season?
I think Jarvis Landry is just going to be one of these. Even when he's been fully healthy, he's been a perennial buy low. Obviously, we have to keep an eye on the knee injury that he suffered. Obviously, came into this game coming off of IR with a sprained MCL. He looked very healthy. He was running nice, crisp routes. He looked ready to play. I'm not totally sure what happened because they replayed the injury and it wasn't super clear.
It seems like he might have just jammed his knee a little bit, I think, right?
Yeah, and he looked to be in a lot of pain, but I didn't see any immediate updates. So just something to keep an eye on. But I mean, Jarvis Landry has been one of these guys that's been perennially undervalued in PPR leagues for a long time. Nonetheless, coming off of a an injury and,
Mhm.
just a lot of circumstances that aren't ideal. So I think Jarvis Landry could be an interesting buy low for some teams in full PPR formats who are looking,
Hurting
to
at
contend
receiver.
this year.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing. Case Keenum. It was okay last night. I don't think he was spectacular, but he was 21 to 33 for 199 yards and a touchdown. Also added 7 yards on the ground. So, I mean, not an elite performance. However, Kate, we got some news pregame that Baker Mayfield not only is dealing with a torn labrum in his left shoulder, he's also dealing with a broken bone in his shoulder to his humerus bone. And I just get the kind of the vibe from Jay Glazer, who reported that news, that it doesn't sound like Odell's going to be back, or excuse me, Baker's going to be back anytime soon because he's got to let that bone heal before the shoulder can heal. Um, what, how does that affect the rest of this offense going forward?
I don't even know that it does.
Mm,
Baker Mayfield hasn't necessarily been a big stellar performer in terms of fantasy production. Case Keenum, I think we're going to see a lot of the same out of Case Keenum. But Case Keenum's a very suitable game manager. He's one of the better backups in the league, I think. I don't think we're going to see a lot of adjustments. I think we saw a lot of spreading the ball around. We saw a lot of running, and I think that's what we are going to continue to expect. This is a run first offense, and if they can continue to run the ball even without Nick Chubb, without Kareem Hunt, they're going to keep doing it.
I would say the one player that it probably hurts the most outside of Odell, because Odell's just a mess right now, is probably Donovan Peoples-Jones, who got hurt last night pregame. But Donovan Peoples-Jones's game is, going down the field and making plays. That's just not really what Case Keenum does. He doesn't throw the ball down the field particularly well. He's more likely to utilize, the tight ends and the running backs. So that is the one guy it hurts. But like for Jarvis Landry, it's
Do
probably
it.
no, yeah, it's probably no effect at all, right?
I love it. Yeah,
Any
absolutely.
anything on the Broncos, because they're just so frustrating to watch. This team just needs to completely change everything, because my gosh, they are boring and they're so bad on offense. It's disgusting to watch them. I'm going to read you their points, Kate, over the last 4 games.
Ugh.
7, 19, 24 against the Raiders, like 17 of them came in the fourth quarter, and then 14 against the Browns. This is bad, really bad.
It's bad, and, you know what? Yikes. But you knew how bad they were, just coming out of the gate because, I mean, I feel like anytime we watch a primetime game, we hear, the commentators just speak glowingly. It doesn't really matter who is on the field, but I feel like anytime we're in primetime, we hear some really nice things about, both teams, regardless of who they are. And immediately as the game started, they put up the stats. It was like the Broncos are, like 15th in rushing, 15th in passing, insert the correct metrics there.
Yeah.
And immediately we heard them say, yeah, but don't be fooled by that. This is an awful offense. And I was like, dang, like we never hear people come out like that. Like, I feel like usually they'll find a way to say that very sweetly. And they did not sugarcoat anything. I think there's so many issues with this Broncos offense across the board. I mean, the play calling, the Browns, they were a pretty tough rushing offense coming. Like they're a tough defense. They're not allowing much to opposing running backs whatsoever. And
Right.
it absolutely puzzles me that they went into this thinking that it felt like this was a kind of a run heavy game script for them. When really you could have been attacking Cleveland down the field a bit into the secondary. And I think if they would have opened up the passing game sooner, they might have had more success. Obviously, they kept the game close, but just gashed left and right. You know what? The Broncos are a team. Just blow it up. Just blow it up and start over again for the millionth time.
Yeah.
John Elway, is he a curse at this point?
I think he might be. It's really really not good right now. Poor Broncos fans. You're gonna have to start all over. Should have drafted Justin Fields last year.
Is there
Oh
a
well.
chance that we see Drew Lock this year? That's probably my biggest takeaway, because I feel like we saw Drew Lock kind of like on the sideline, like ready to dive in, ready to take some action. He
I hope
never ended
not.
up coming
I
into the
hope not.
game.
I
But
really hope not.
they look unsettled though.
They look unsettled. We're gonna talk about the rest of Week 7, Kate, in just a second. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Bet Online. We are back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to the website or use the updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. All right, Kate, let's talk about Week 7. Just really quickly, this is a big bye week. We have, 6 bye weeks? How do you navigate the bye weeks, especially if you're in a league with short benches?
You start players that are starting, and that's pretty much like the biggest strategy here is to get like there are some dynasty leagues where I've had some trouble because I have a lot of Buffalo Bills, I have a lot of Chargers, I have a lot of Vikings, I have a lot of Steelers, I have a lot of Cowboys. Like literally any team that is on bye this week is somebody that I've sort of like built my rosters around, maybe outside of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But like I think the point is that, if your teams are cornered around these pieces, this is really just the ultimate streaming league week. Even in my dynasty leagues, I'm making waiver wire moves just to pick up wide receivers that I think might have a chance to give me at least 8 to 10 points, if that.
Right.
Like I've got a lot of Chris Moore, wide receiver of the Houston Texans this week. I had 121.9 point performance against the New England Patriots, but he's a guy that I'm picking up against the Cardinals. I'm gonna hope that maybe there's a correct game script. That's how I'm approaching this week, because it is absolutely brutal
I would say that
matchup.
I'm not making big roster moves for one bye week. And what I mean by big roster moves is I'm not trying to trade away a guy just to fill my tight end spot, or I'm not releasing somebody that I really like just to pick up Danny Amendola from free agency. You know what I mean? Like, be smart. It's only
Yes.
1 week. It's not if you get a 0 at a wide receiver position because you picked up somebody or you didn't have anybody to play, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to lose an asset to try to win 1 week, if that makes sense, right?
Oh, absolutely. And like the teams that are on bye, like I said, these are all pretty productive offenses, and these are all players that have been pretty productive for fantasy football. Don't demolish your roster. When I'm talking Chris Moore, I'm saying, I'm dropping Anthony Miller, who has been not even like active for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like those are the kind of players I'm willing to drop in a dynasty format just to fill those roster spots. But I mean, I'm not letting this change my approach. I'm not, like you said, making trades to fix this week, because that's how you blow up a really good team. And there are so many productive fantasy players in this week 7 bye. If you trade them away, you're going to be on the losing end of the trade.
All right, let's get to some guys that we are really interested to see in Week 7, Kate. And I'm going to go ahead and start with some running backs. I mean, Cordero Patterson coming off a bye week, still the RB3 in points per game this year. Does he keep it up against Miami? What do you think?
I think so. I'm just at this point, I'm rolling with Cordero Patterson until proven otherwise. And this is a guy that, I'm willing to make some offers for, because I still think we are all feeling so tentative about Cordero Patterson. I do think you can still get him well beyond the price of, the third running back in terms of points per game. I still think he's cheaper than that in your dynasty league. So like, this is another guy that, if you are contending, I think you can probably eke more production than you're going to have to pay up for. But you have to roll with Cordero Patterson until proven otherwise.
All right, let's move to tight end. So currently, in terms of points per game, we've got Rob Gronkowski at number 1, but he's been out. Travis Kelce at 2, Mark Andrews at 3, Dalton Schultz at 4, who is on a bye, and then Darren Waller. Darren Waller's kind of been quiet over the last couple of weeks, Kate. 10.9 points last week against Denver, 8.5 points last week against Chicago. Is this the week Darren Waller finally breaks out?
I don't know. And this Raiders offense is kind of puzzled me. We've seen Henry Ruggs get a little bit more involved. We've seen Bryan Edwards get a little bit more involved. I'm a little concerned that they seem to be spreading the ball out a little bit more. We got so excited in week 1 when Darren Waller saw 19 targets and we thought that we were about to be in for like a wild ride this season. But we just haven't seen, more than 8 targets for Darren Waller since. He's just been sitting kind of right around that 50 yard, hopefully you get a touchdown in there, but 50 to 60 yards. That's what you've been getting from Darren Waller. It's not ideal.
Fine. It's fine.
Yeah, you're not going to ever snoot your nose at that. Like that's an official term now for fantasy football. You're not going to snoot your nose at 50 yards, period. Cause that's a great streaming week, but at the price you pay for Darren Waller, super disappointing.
I got another tight end I want to ask you about because this is an interesting one. So Dallas Goddard is now the full-time starting tight end for the Eagles. They traded away Zach Ertz. It was Howie Roseman basically said this is an audition period for Goddard over the next 11 games, right? Like he's a free agent after this year. We traded away Ertz so we can see him in a full-time role. If you don't have Zach Ertz, is this the time? Or excuse me, if you don't have Dallas Goddard, is this the time to go out and grab him before he gets a bunch of targets, or do you wait and see how he performs in a bigger role?
This is one of these times where I'm just sort of holding pat. If I have him, I'm going to hold on because we have seen the upside with Dallas Goddard. We haven't seen it consistently, unfortunately, but we've seen him be able to handle a nice, suitable workload. The way that they alternated between, like, if we could just combine Goddard and Ertz's stat line every week, we'd generally be pretty happy. So I'm holding pat, but I do think I worry that this isn't a great time to go trade for him because this is the opportunity that most fantasy managers have been waiting for, is to see what Goddard can do full time without Zach Ertz. So I think the asking price might be a little bit steep, but if he comes out of the gate and maybe puts up a stinker in week 1 without Zach Ertz or week 2 without Zach Ertz, that's when I go ahead and make my offer because people are going to be looking for that instant gratification. As soon as Ertz is out, they're going to want fantasy production. And if they don't see it, that's when I want to take advantage of the buy low.
All right, one more guy that I want to mention before we move on. Jaylen Waddle. Waddle's been pretty good for fantasy when Tua has played. So in PPR leagues, in games where Tua has started, 16.1 points in week 1, 8.8 points in week 2, 29 points in week 6. Kate, what's more impressive is the targets. 6, 8, 13. Is Jaylen Waddle just somebody who is going to be a must start when Tua plays? Is it a little bit of a fluke? What do you think is going on here?
I think in full PPR formats, he's a must start, period. I definitely think he seems to be the focal point. Obviously, you have to be a little bit cautious because we have seen injuries to Devontae Parker, keeping him out of the lineup. But it seems that Waddle is the go-to guy to move the chains. And I do think from week to week, he's going to be peppered with targets. Maybe if somebody's unsatisfied with those targets because they haven't necessarily all produced lots of yardage for as many targets as he's received, maybe you try to scoop him up. But I think he's a weekly flex play at the least, as long as Tua's in the starting lineup.
How are you going to feel about Waddle once Deshaun Watson is throwing him the ball in like 2 weeks?
Whew. Um,
By the way,
that
Miami,
that
what are you
becomes
doing?
that
What are you
becomes
doing?
a little more complicated. But you know what? We've heard this rumor so many times. I will believe it when I see Deshaun Watson in a Dolphins uniform, because
Okay.
we've heard it too many times. Fool me once, fool me twice. I've been fooled like 3 or 4 times at this point. Never again until I see him in the uniform walking out of the tunnel.
All
I
right.
will say that.
I do agree with you. It just seems like thing is going to go on forever. I'll just do a little quick price check on Jaylen Waddle. Okay. So he is currently wide receiver 28 on Dynasty League football. I'm going to name some guys that are around him, ahead of him, behind him. You tell me who you'd rather have going forward.
Okay.
Cortland Sutton or Jaylen Waddle?
Cortland Sutton.
Rashad Bateman or Jaylen Waddle?
Jaylen Waddle.
Okay, that's interesting. Bateman is wide receiver 25 on Dynasty League football. Waddle 28. Deontay Johnson.
Deontay Johnson.
Okay. Tyler Lockett.
Ooh.
That's an interesting one.
That is an interesting one. I think, I'm going to go with Waddle there, because I think knowing the product of Jaylen Waddle and what we saw in his collegiate days, we know his ceiling, I think, is very high. He's got the big playability. I'm going to hope that Jaylen Waddle with the target share is just going to be a little bit more consistent with, just in terms of like Tyler Lockett. It's a roller coaster. So I'll take Jaylen Waddle there in hopes that he's just a little bit more of a consistent asset.
Last one, Hollywood Brown.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh, that one I don't have a suitable answer without.
I do. I got this one. It's Hollywood for me. In his last 11 games with Lamar Jackson, Hollywood has scored 10 touchdowns. Like, whenever Lamar plays and Hollywood's on the field, you have to have him in the lineup, because I know he's inconsistent, but he can have weeks where it's 6 for 125 and 2 touchdowns. It's just, he's like the modern day Will Fuller. I mean, I guess Will Fuller's modern day, so I guess that doesn't really count. But it's just, I trust the quarterback situation long term because I trust Lamar. I think Hollywood's talented. I'd rather have Hollywood. So
and Lamar is like passing his mind out. He's
only getting better too. That's the thing. He's only getting better.
It's been impressive.
All right, let's take one more quick break so I can tell you guys about RockAuto.com. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts to customers online for over 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brand, specifications, and prices that you prefer. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAuto.com today. I actually had to use Rock Auto a couple days ago. I hit a deer with my car. Needed some new headlights.
Oh, God.
So shout out to Rock Auto for being there. So
thank God.
Yeah, we're good though. All right, let's do some commotion. And Kate, this is a wild week for this, because 6 teams on a bye. Your waiver wire is probably looking real shaky right now. But who are some guys that you want to promote from the waiver wire or your bench into your starting lineups?
This one's pretty gross. I don't know if you're ready for it, but
I'm ready.
I'm gonna roll with a offense that is still looking to bounce back. Obviously, we saw the Kansas City Chiefs come up in the second half of last week, but they struggled to get things going right away. I'm looking at Byron Pringle, who has not seen a consistent target share, but he has seen at least 2 targets in each game this week, or so far this season. But they get to face the Tennessee Titans, who have just been absolutely abysmal against the wide receiver position. They've just been allowing touchdowns. Like, it's not even that they're allowing buku yardage. They allowed Tyler Lockett 178 yards in a score, Corey Davis 111 yards in a score. But otherwise, like, it's the touchdowns that have been absolutely killing the Tennessee Titans through the air. Byron Pringle has been a guy that we've seen plenty of times Mahomes will go to in these types of situations. I think that you can do worse than Byron Pringle, and at the very least, you're probably looking at 5 fantasy points.
Probably. You can certainly do worse, and I'm going to give you a name right now that is certainly worse. Are you ready? Because that's the bit here. I like to pick the absolute worst names.
Yeah.
Kate, how about an old friend of ours, Dante Pettis, for the New York Giants?
God.
How's that? Last week for the Giants, he saw 11 targets, and no Kadarius Toney this week. The wide receivers are still banged up. I don't think they're going to be able to run on Carolina. So if you're looking for somebody who's probably going to see 7 to 8 targets, Dante Pettis is an option. I don't want to say he's a good option, but he is an option.
I mean, the issue is that they need bodies at this point. So I think you're kind of on track there, unfortunately, gross as it may be. Gross. But I'll give you one more gross name. Guys Perfect. Coming off a touchdown. We haven't seen the breakout this season yet, but Alan Lazard, he has been playing most of the team's offensive snaps. He's been on the field last week. We finally saw him get a touchdown. And now we get to see them face off against the Washington football team, they've been unable to stop anything through the air. This is an outing that I think, he could reasonably see 50 yards. And, maybe we'll see an extra touchdown to boot. Last week we saw Demarcus Robinson get 46 and a score. We saw those 2 big long bombs from Jameis Winston to Marquez Callaway and Deontay Harris. This seems like a really nice moment for Aaron Rodgers to just catapult the ball down the field and maybe, just maybe hit Alan Lazard for that connection.
That's a really good one. I like that one a lot. I'll go with another tight end to close out the show. Durham Smythe, the second tight end for the Dolphins. If you're in a 2 tight end league or a tight end premium league, he's not awful. 9 targets over the last 2 weeks.
The ultimate endorsement. He's not awful.
He's not awful. 5 for 59 last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Falcons allow a ton of points to to opposing tight ends. He's on the field all the time because he's a blocker. He's averaging like 56 offensive snaps a game.
All right.
You could do worse. I don't know how much worse, but you could do worse. How's that?
I want a guy on the field. Just give me the folks on the field.
Yes, there you go. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We are on YouTube, so check us out there. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. You can follow Kate at FF Ball Blast, and I'm Mark at Marcus _Mosher.